Okay. Hello, this is Nikki Watson, and I'm here with my friend Lauren Tatarchuk, and we're really excited to be here today. And I'm really, really thankful to Lauren for coming and sharing your story. And I wanted to say that I met Lauren at the Spirit Junkie Masterclass this past summer, and I just feel super thankful for her story and humbled by her story and thankful for her standing in her truth unabashedly and with authenticity and a sense of bravery. I mean, a sense of fearlessness, but for sure bravery. So I wanted to just share a little bit about her first. She is a 25-year-old Katniss Everdeen archetype. She was classified with severe fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue at age 15. 2 years ago, she went on a journey to heal herself, and she has triumphed. She seeks to illustrate human potential and possibility, evoke a sense of wonder, and inspire others into action. She shares stories, thoughts, wisdom, inspiration, and lessons from her healing journey, and she takes from many fields, including psychology, metaphysics, spirituality, nutrition and healing modalities, philosophy, science, and more. She shares life through her eyes, from chronic dis-ease to conscious bliss. So, I want to say that again because I want to get it very, very accurately because it's very meaningful. She shares life through her eyes, from chronic dis-ease to conscious bliss. So, thank you again for being here, and please share a little bit about your story, or a lot about your story.
Hi, Nikki. Thank you so much for having me. It's seriously such an honor, and I love you so dearly, even though we only met once. Like, I feel such a bond with you, so thank you
Yes,
so much.
thank you.
So, like Nikki said, I was classified as severe fibromyalgia at 15. My first symptom was age 12, actually. My first symptom was a severe migraine at age 12, followed by my menstrual cycle starting. So, from 12 to 15, I was kind of an experiment and unknown to doctors. Like, they put me on birth control at age 12, which was my first prescription drug to control the migraines. And then at 15, I was classified. I remember I was like laying on this table, and my mom and dad were there, and the doctor was like touching my body, like tender points or trigger points they were called. And he said like so matter of factly, so nonchalantly, like, yes, yes, she has severe fibromyalgia and fatigue. And like my dad started crying, and my mom started asking questions, and it started from there. So between age 15 and 22, 23, I was just a mess, Nikki. Like, I went to every single doctor. I was hospitalized multiple times because I was having low-grade fevers. So, like, that affects your whole functionality. So, like, every day for, like, I don't know, a year, 6 months at a time, I'd go with low-grade fevers. And I was on so many pills. Like, I couldn't wake up unless I had Adderall. Like, they put me on Adderall for ADHD, but then I ended up using it for the fatigue, or like, because I couldn't function without it. And then in college, I remember setting my alarm and putting like Adderall next to my bed so that it would raise me up, and like it was just awful. It was like very, very dependent on pills. I was getting auric migraines weekly. So what that meant was I would get like a signal in my eye, my vision would start going, and then it would be followed by half my body would go numb and start tingling, then go numb, and I lose my speech, so I couldn't talk. So it was almost like seizure like, and it would be followed by like the worst headache of your life. And so that was weekly, like while I was in school, high school, college. And it got to the point where I literally couldn't walk up the stairs. My boyfriend would have to like help me up the stairs, and I was just a mess. Like, I was on literally a shoebox full of pills: one to get up, one for migraines, one for muscle spasms, one for everything. And it was really, really not a way to live. I was very angry, and at the time I didn't realize it was because my liver needed help. Because liver and anger are mixed. The emotion is linked with liver.
Yes.
So think angry drunk. You know, angry drunk,
Yeah.
alcohol, liver. Yeah. Um, and so, I mean, like I said, I went to every doctor. A lot of doctors told me I was faking it and told me fibromyalgia didn't exist because it had just started to be accepted in the medical community, just about, for adults. So being a 15-year-old to 20-year-old, it was like very unheard of at that time. So what was that? Like, yeah, like between 10 and 5, 10 years ago. And Yeah, I just remember leaving so many doctor's offices crying, bawling, and just being like, I just want to be a normal teenager. Like, I don't want this. And it came to the point where, like, I just recently have been able to start seeing my collarbones and my vertebrae and my shoulder blades because, like, I was just one big fascia rock mess. Like, it was like this. And I literally couldn't see my shoulder blades. I didn't see the separate vertebrae, and I couldn't see my collarbone. So it was like really bad, and like anywhere I walked into, I was like the worst case I had seen, you know? And yeah, and so they really couldn't do anything with me. They were just giving me pills, and of course they started laying on other names for me and stuff, but the main classification was fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. So by age 22, I had a breakdown point. Breakdown became breakthrough, and I was in my undergrad for college, and I barely got up the stairs to my apartment, and I went to go open the medicine cabinet to go take something because I was so dependent, and I just lost it. I was like, ah, and I ripped this medicine cabinet off from the wall, and I slammed it on the floor. And I picked up all of the prescription pills and started throwing them at the wall and the ceiling and just like anything I could throw it at that would feel good. And I just like collapsed sobbing. And that was the moment that changed my life because I was like, okay, this makes no sense. I was like, I am 22 years old. I was 22 or 23, and they're managing me a life. They're promising me a life of managing my symptoms. So essentially managing my misery. And at that point, I really didn't care if I lived or died. Like, I wasn't gonna do anything to hurt myself, but I was secretly wishing that it would just end. Yeah. So that's always something I started to recently share with people because it was scary to admit that. And, you know, and it was just to the point where I was like, either I'm going to heal myself or I'm going to die trying, basically. And that's what started my journey. I was like, okay, so they're promising me a life of managing my misery. At 22, 23, I was like, what am I going to be like at 40? I can barely get upstairs now. I can't do anything. I can't even work out or else I'm in pain for like months, you know? And I was like, this is no way to live. I was like, it makes no sense. There must be another way. So that's what started my journey. And so I was in my senior year of business undergraduate, and my parents asked me what I wanted for my graduation present. And and then fate had it that I saw this tagline somewhere on like localharvest.com or .org, and they were like, I'm a certified natural health practitioner. And I was like, I want to be that. And so at that point, I had thrown out most of my pills. I was only taking the ones that I like really desperately needed to function. And I was like, let's go. This is what I want to do. So it was my first introduction to natural health. Like I had started buying books and like teaching myself beforehand. Like I had started cleaning out my pantry with like, and with better food options. I had started. So that's really the only thing I had started to do before this. And so I went on this thing. I learned about herbs and enzymes and all these different things. And then I came home and did my first cleanse. I was down to 100 pounds. And that's what started it. So from there, I became an enzyme specialist. I went to like some enzyme training, and I was just using myself as a science experiment, basically. And when I started healing, I just knew inside of me, I was like, okay, whatever's going to work for me is going to work for anybody else, because I felt like a beta body. I was like, okay, let's go. Yeah. The beta body, those words kept like ringing in my head. And so I became a certified natural health practitioner and then enzyme specialist. Now, most recently, I do biofeedback, bioresonance, which I can explain later. And I went through all these different diets. I mean, I'm very self-taught. Like, I have schooling in natural health and certifications, but honestly, you could go to seminars until you're blue in the face, but it's only what you do with it when you get home. And so I would take what I learned and apply it to myself, and if it didn't apply, I just would go down rabbit trails. And like, I mean, I have so many books. I'm like so self-taught, and I just became my own private investigator. And I healed myself. Like, I'm about 80-90% healed, a little ways to go. I feel like I'm in like a phase out period for like a year. Like the worst is almost done, you know. And I'm just here. I'm like so on a mission. I'm like just want to teach people how to heal themselves and move from being the victim to the one in charge, and that like this isn't normal. Like, we're so okay with this. How are we so okay with this as a society? And it's just because something is common does not make it normal, and we've forgotten that. We think it's normal, and it's not. I'm here to remind people it's not normal, and you can heal yourself.
How has
Yeah.
your I mean, it's just incredible to hear the whole story. And I mean, how has your family reacted and the people close to you have reacted to your transformation?
Yeah, so it was quite like my parents and my family, like they've been so supportive. Like they were the ones, my mom and dad, they're like, Lauren, take the year off, like before you start working, because like I'm one of those, like I'm starting, I'm gonna
Yeah.
give it my all, like I'm a hard worker, and because they knew if I went into the business world, like I wouldn't stop to take care of myself at that point. And I was just so sick, and I was just taking it. So, like, thank you so much to them for telling me that, and like for me listening. Because at that point, I was like, I figured it out myself, And so they were really supportive. My sister was so supportive. Like, she started getting into natural health around the same time, also, and so like she just really supported me. Everyone did, and my beloved Tall, he has been like so amazing and really supported me, and like everybody's been really supportive. And a lot of times like people don't understand what's going on. So
Yeah.
like there have been periods where like I so when you're healing, it's messy. It's not the French countryside with roses and lavender. It's messy, and you have to be willing to get your hands dirty, and it's for the courageous. It's not people who just want smooth sailing.
Yeah.
It's
Or a
see
quick
I
fix.
yeah, like you can quick fix all day. You can band-aid that, but that wound will come up somewhere else. I mean, if you just band-aid, if you don't heal the root cause of it, it's going to show up in different ways. So as you're healing, my tagline is the only way to is through. Because in order to get to the other side, we have to make some moves through it. And it's like I said, it's messy. And so there were times when like a lot of times I looked worse than better.
Yeah.
Actually, most of the time I worse because I've been like detoxing essentially for 2 years, on
Yeah.
and off, and they were scared, and so a couple of times, my family wanted me to go see regular doctors and get MRIs and all these things, and one time I did cave and I got an MRI because I was like getting terrible migraines again. It started to happen and a few things. And then finally they were like, you have to go get this test and take this medication. And if you don't, you'll never be better. And I was like, okay, no, thank you. I was like, I remember you guys. And I was like, no, thank you. And so they've been very supportive. It's just like people don't understand really. So they're
Yeah.
scared for you. But overall, it's been a lot of support. Yeah. And just trusting me that they know that I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah, that's got to be really hard for your parents and your family because we do live in a culture where we we're kind of programmed that way, and I mean, there's got to be a lot of things that come up for a lot of people that a lot of obstacles that come up for a lot of people. I mean, if you could share some obstacles that are going to come up because people are going to listen to this and they're going to be like, well, you know, I feel the exact same way. I'm in a lot of pain and I'm going through a lot of stuff. And I do think it's like until you have that mustard seed of faith and you start walking, you can't see it. Like we have to see it to believe it. And we can't, unless we experience it ourselves. It's one thing to hear someone's story, but I mean, what are some of the things that people are going to come up against? And what are some of the things that you can, share that are going to kind of soothe that process for some people?
Yeah, a lot of things come up. So it's like society, like you said, we're programmed to do the short fixes. And so you have to enter the process seeing and knowing the outcome. And it's not going to be overnight. It's going to be a long journey. Like I'm 2 years in, I still have a phase out of 1 or 2 more years. Like I am that 80, 90%, but all those, like that last part is the hardest.
Yeah,
Not the hardest, like less messy, but whereas it's like you have to give it time. We
yeah,
can't rush things. And people are going to want to rush it with you. People are going to tell you that if you don't do this, you won't get better. They're going to tell you that it's not going to work. They're going to
yeah,
tell you the statistics. And I
yeah,
just want to
right,
say that whoever's listening to this, like, they don't know you. They know statistics
right.
based
It's
on
like one fits all.
same. Yeah, on a one size fits all, exactly. And it's so funny because they just look at you as a separate being, like your organs and your tissues and your symptoms, and like, and they're just telling you all these averages based on a small sample population. Like, we are highly evolved human beings. We, it's just so ridiculous the fact that, you know, they just use these scare tactics. It's chronic, it's forever, you can manage it. No, like I just want to say, don't be okay with that. Like, be resilient and just know that you can heal. Like, this is something I want to get across that I think we forget also. The main thing is that we're not our symptoms.
Yeah.
Like, people forget. They're like, oh, so I hear people saying, I want to fight fibromyalgia, I want to conquer fibromyalgia, but like, what about healing you, the person behind it?
Yeah.
You know, and we start battling with the symptoms, but then we forget about the person experiencing the symptoms. Like, what's up there? What's going on there? You know? So I just want to say, just to remind people, like, you're not your symptoms. You're the person witnessing your
Yeah.
symptoms. And society is going to scare you and tell you you can't do it based on XYZ. And that, I just want to tell you it's BS. It's really BS because I'm pissed and you should be too because it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a setup for, it feels like that. It feels like it was and that modern medicine has its place, as well as holistic therapies, as well as other healing modalities. Everything has its place, but when people with the term of chronic illness, chronic disease, when it's labeled as such, and then we're just going to kind of fight this one thing and not taking the whole being into consideration, it does feel like along the way we kind of lost ourselves. At one point, it was good, helping people. I mean, doctors are good at putting bones back together, and um, there's really a good place for it. But I think a person probably does get to the point where they're like, okay, there's got to be something more, like how you said. And so I feel like there's got to be an inner strength, an inner voice. I speak to that a lot, but I don't, and I only know from my experience. But I mean, there's got to be an inner strength or an inner voice within you, within me, within everybody that can kind of help push you through those moments of feeling like you're alone or that you can't do this. I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been so many times. I mean, it has been the first year when I started healing. I mean, so many toxins and tears were shed. I mean, I
Yeah.
was just a mess. It is so difficult. Sorry, this has popped up. Um, it is just so difficult and it's scary. And like, for me, there was just inside of me where I was just came to the point where, like, I'm not going to live like this. Like, it just came to the point where, like, this is not an option for me to live like this because I was so miserable. I was like 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10 of pain every single day. And I mean, it is just not a way to live, at least for me. And I wasn't willing to accept it. So I would say, oh, this is actually what I wrote on my refrigerator when I decided to start healing. I wrote focus, discipline, and commitment. And those three words are what got me through. Focus to see the long term, discipline to get there, and a commitment to not give up on yourself. I mean, it's trial and error. Like, not every, like, I'll talk about like the foundational things that like go for everybody, but like with your own healing, it's so individual. Like, you have to try and you have to trust yourself, and you just have to know that you deserve, and it's your birthright to have a better life and to feel good. Like, that is our birthright. That is what we're here to do. We're not put here to be in misery and pain. That doesn't make any sense, you know?
Yeah.
You just have to, yeah, you just have to know.
So what you said there was that when I made my decision to heal, and I think that that's a really good point. That you have to kind of make that decision. Nobody's going to come and save you per se. Like, nobody's going to come and, like, it starts in our minds, in that small decision that I'm willing to see things differently. I'm willing to move towards healing. And I think that a lot of people are more comfortable staying stuck where they are. So it's scary to move forward. It's scary to think about what their life would be like without pain, and a lot of emotional, mental components. But so would you say to somebody, because I know people who are very much like, well, things aren't going to change for me, or this is just the way that it is. would you say that those are beliefs that can definitely be altered? Like, what would we say to somebody who says, well, that's just the way that it is, or I'll never get better? How, is it just a matter of just switching that belief? Is that possible to do that?
Yeah, it's possible. It's not only possible, it's necessary. And you like that's how I used to be. I used to think that this is just how it is. Like when I was younger, I thought I was going to be like the face of fibromyalgia for like adolescence. I was
Yeah.
like, cause like I was like I felt like the poster child, of that. I know, who
Yeah.
says it?
I mean, sure, that makes
But
perfect sense. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and it just if you want to heal, you have to come to the point where you want to heal more than you want to suffer.
Yeah.
And it comes to a point where if you don't change your beliefs and the way you're thinking about the situation's not going to change. You have to change in order for the situation to change. And that's the hardest thing for people because what was it? I was actually reading Joe Dispenza yesterday and I have like this really nice quote that he said. I'm actually good. I know you love him. I'm
He's
actually
my
tying him into like, yeah.
he's my
Let me
man.
get it. I
I'm
know he is.
I'm really hoping to go see him. I really want to go see him this December. He's coming to Philly and I really want to go.
I'm
So,
coming.
you're going?
I'm gonna come. Yeah, yeah. I just decided.
It's done then.
By the way, we'll talk about. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So cool. I'm excited, peeps. So this is his quote that really rang to me yesterday, and it says, "To change is to think greater than how we feel." So to change is to think greater than how we feel. So we cannot base our beliefs and thoughts on how we feel in the current situation. Because then
Yeah.
how would you get from A to C? You take one step. You have to get to B and then to C and then to D. But how do you get there? You just start movement. I mean, if we can't base our beliefs and thoughts on our current how we currently feel, like
Yeah.
if that's what I would have done, I would have never got anywhere. I knew inside of me that I could feel better at some point. Although I didn't feel good then, I knew that there was a possibility. So for anybody who says it's just how it is, it's never going to change, it's not. If that's how you feel, like if you just have a willingness to see it and a desire to heal, and even a small inkling that it can change, then you can start the healing process. But until then, nothing is going to change. Yeah.
So that moves us from because I always had a sense that we had something to do with our lives, that we could create our destiny. But it wasn't until I started learning about that we are creators, that we have the power to create our life with our minds, with our experience. But it wasn't until it was put in that on that in that frame of reference that I really was like, oh no, we really do. Like, I understand it now. Everything that I kind of had an inkling about is kind of like, okay, no, that's the way that it is. So do you think that maybe some people, they know that, but then they just listen more to their fear voice? So every time that they're complaining about something or they're speaking from a fear place, and maybe I'll say to them, like, maybe I'll say something positive, and sometimes it feels like it doesn't resonate because they're just not there yet or whatever. I wonder if deep down they do have that and they're just kind of pushing it aside and not listening to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's also the programming. Like, we're so programmed to believe that this fear-based voice within us of like, no, it can't be done.
Yeah.
And, the process of healing is scary because it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, right.
And it takes, yeah, I mean, yeah, like, oh, so much work. And this fear that tells us that it can't be done, I mean, it's so tricky because you have to, I guess, like, what I'm saying is the person has to come to a point where they want to heal. And so when
Yes, they
that
want to
happens,
heal. Yeah.
want to heal, because there's even so many people, like, along my journey, like, I will try to help and who have that fear and stuff. And I'll tell them stuff like the positive thing doesn't really sound good, and they're just not ready for it.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I've learned. Like, I've learned to love people enough to let them have their own journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's been the hardest thing because I just want to help everybody and I
Right.
want them to see that they can have a better life. I know you're the same way. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, no, you don't have to suffer. Please don't suffer. I want you to feel abundant health, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just, we can plant seeds. So we're seed planters, essentially. And exactly, yeah, raise the roof, right? And it's just so hard. I know I'm kind of botching it, but that's because there's no right answer. The person has to be ready to it, and all we can do is plant the seed and tell them that there is a better way if they want, and then let them choose their own journey.
Yeah. 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 So, has anybody been like your, I think, I think for me, the beginning of my kind of this spiritual journey, as Dr. Joe would say, breaking the habit of being yourself journey started with, some mentors and definitely the willingness. So when I couldn't focus on anything else, I would focus on my willingness. I am willing. Like that would be my mantra for like the all days. Just I
I'm
am
chill.
willing. Yes. And even if I didn't know what I was just breaking open that resistance and that shield to allowing good things to come through and to feel better, just feeling better. So I didn't really have any physical, um, I think once I started having kids, I was feeling anxious and just, I wouldn't say, maybe depressed, but just kind of like things feel like they're not getting better. Things feel like they're never going, like I'm never going to feel like the way I feel like I should feel. This abundance, this lightness, this joy, sustainably. It always felt like it would be like, oh, things seem fine, but then I would just feel like completely, human, but still crappy. But then the willingness came to like move towards healing and understand that this is a process and that it's not just going to get better. You're not going to just feel better and everything's going to be perfect. It's never going to be that way. But so Dr. Joe was one of my first mentors, Gabby, of course, and like Hay House and Dr. Wayne Dyer. Did you have anybody in that beginning part that kind of was a voice of inspiration for you?
Yes, my all-time muse of forever. His name is Dr. Bernard Jensen, and he is known as the Godfather of Nutrition, and
Oh,
he was my absolute catalyst of life, and like the reason I'm here today with you. I bought all of his books. Like he had like a special for like all 50 of his books or something. I bought them all, and I drank up every single word. Some of them were small, but like, his basically he started healing people with nutrition. Like he ended up having a sanitarium in California, and just people would come to him, and he literally healed people with nutrition and food, and then like supplemental things. And oh my god, my favorite subject of all are bowels and colon health. So pooping and colon health are like my two favorite areas of the body. And that was his big thing, because like if 80%, okay, so 80% of our immune system is in our stomach and in our guts and everything. So if that is toxic, if we have years and years of toxic things, we can't heal. So his whole thing was like, you have to clean the bowel, you have to have nutrition. And so like when I started reading his books, well, let me back up quickly. So like you said, you have to have the willingness. So I was like, I have the willingness to see this differently. And so what first started it was I had a really bad shoulder. Like my shoulder blade was stuck to my spine. I didn't know what it was. I literally started Googling. I Googled shoulder feels stuck to spine. Or like some words like that. I was like looking around. I was like, what the hell's going on? I was like, I'm willing. I was like, what's going on? And so it came up frozen shoulder. So you've heard of frozen shoulder. Have you heard of frozen
I
shoulder?
haven't.
Yeah. Yeah, so frozen shoulder is just like when it hurts and you can't move and it's just like frozen to your like
Okay.
stuck to your muscles and like your back. And so I was like, okay, so there's a name. So I got a book, and basically it was exercises of how to release the frozen shoulder. And what I found was that where the pain was actually coming from, they weren't having me focus there. They were having me focus on different parts of the muscles, on like completely separate from where the pain was.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was my first light bulb. And I was like, wait a second. And they called it referral pain. So the pain was coming from somewhere else, but manifesting in the
Yes.
shoulder. And so that's what opened my eyes. That was my first I'm willing. And then that was what was given to me of like,
Aw.
look at it differently.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'll look differently. And so from there on, that's when Dr. Bernard Johnson came into my life. And that was through the natural health certification. They talked about him a lot. And what he also found was he did iridology. So iridology is a branch of natural health medicine where you can literally look at the person's eye and irises to see the physical well-being of the body. So like how we have reflexology points on our hands and our feet and our ears, which we do. Um, they're all correlated to an organ or a specific part of the body. And each spine, each vertebrae of the spine is also correlated to a specific part of the body and a specific organ. So, as are the eyes, the same exact thing. And so I got really into that and I started looking at my eyes, and literally you could see like there are predisposition markers on your eyes that tell you your weaknesses, your strengths, and then like what you need to work on. And my eyes have changed. So my eyes were all brown 2 years ago. Did clearing. I've been watching them clear up as I guess I was born with blue eyes, which nobody thought to tell me until recently, and I was like, well, guys, that's like a thing. and so like I started watching my eyes clear up. And so it's literally like those little things that I would see. That's a whole nother topic. I'm like getting on a rant here,
No,
but
I love it.
yeah.
I love
Yeah, it
I
was
love it.
him who started that nutrition for me was the biggest thing. And like nutrition is like my heart and soul and everything, because if you want to heal, you have to be serious about your nutrition. You cannot have sweet thoughts on a sour stomach. So, I mean, we have to clean up that stomach, we have to clean up that nutrition. And then him, and I would say just about 8 months ago, the second most influencer in my life was Dr. John Sarno. And he was a doctor in New York, and he was seeing patients. He was like a very prestigious doctor, seeing patients with chronic lower back pain and all sorts of stuff. And he was getting super frustrated. Thank God he got frustrated, because he realized that these patients weren't healing. He was like, I can give them ice and I can give them heat. He's like, but even that doesn't really make sense. And like, I can give them pills and some will get better and some don't. So what he found was that he basically got into psychosomatics, and psychosomatics are where stress internally, here and here, causes physical manifestations in the body.
Yeah.
And I found his book, I read all three of his books multiple times within 2 weeks. I mean, I was obsessed, like I was when Dr. Bernard Johnson came into my life. And he basically found that childhood trauma, of repressed emotions of anger and sorrow and just pain, we let it build up because we can't handle it as kids. We don't know, and we just hide it. And with that, when it basically it adds up, and then when it starts to about to be spill over into our conscious mind, so like we push stuff away, like, oh, we're fine, but really we're hurting, but we don't even realize it because we're just like, no, I don't want to think about it, I don't want to go there. Well, when it's about to erupt into our conscious mind, what this psych will literally do is bypass your intellect. So you would say, okay, I would rather feel those emotions than get physical symptoms, right? But the psych doesn't give you an option.
Yeah.
It'll induce physical symptoms through mild oxygen deprivation into the soft tissues, into everything. And I read that and I was just like, oh my God, he's right. He's so right. And that's what causes physical symptoms. And so in order to heal, we have to go back through the trauma to remember it, to bring it to the surface, to allow it to exit our bodies. And as I started doing this, Nikki, literally, I was at a stalemate. I was like on 13 supplements at the time. I was like, okay, something still isn't working. And then psychosomatic psychology came into my life through Dr. Sarno. And I would have realization. I'm like, okay, why am I acting like this? Why am I feeling this? And as I would have the realizations, and I would like follow the rabbit hole down back to childhood and stuff, and like remember instances of like pain and trauma, I would have physical releases. Like it was like spirit was like, yes, you got it, you got it, you got it. And so psychosomatics, Dr. John Sarno, and the nutrition, Dr. Bernard Johnson, were the two catalysts of my life.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. I love it so much. I can't wait to look them up. Um,
Yes.
So I want to talk about nutrition a little bit, but I feel like with some of the emotional stuff, I mean, for me, so I think from an emotion perspective, so things come up for me. So I see it with my kids, because that's just my platform. That's what my experience is. So when I'll get angry, and I'll get I'll have so I go to the anger. I go to the yelling, but I've experimented with it where if I don't do that, it turns into like a sadness, and then I'll have to cry really hard. And so I think that that's how how I heal that is through the crying, just the deep, um, huge, deep sobbing, where you're just but when you're if you don't know what we're talking about, you just think you're a mess, right? You just think you're depressed, or you're losing it. You're not qualified to be a parent or a human, and what's wrong with you, like. But and you don't know. But when you know what we're talking about, you give yourself permission to go there and heal, and it goes from like I'm undeserving. Well, sometimes it can go from like you're not doing enough to I'm undeserving of healing, and then I'm undeserving of this experience, and then it's like no, you are okay, and I feel sorry for you. It turns into this whole thing where you have these conversations with yourself of like where all the pain is, and it comes up, and then it's almost like a storm. You can feel it, and then you're in the storm, and then the sun comes out, and you're like, oh, I feel better, like I feel good. And so I think normalizing that process, and so you're talking about physical symptoms too. I mean, can you speak to like the crying or the symptoms that come up that we can use to heal ourselves?
Yeah, like what you're doing is so therapeutic and so good for you. Like, because when we repress those emotions, that's when literally like you're saying, like not necessarily the physical symptoms, but like other symptoms are anxiety, depression, like all these different things. It's the same thing in a different form, and some of us have different ones. And so what I thought was interesting when my symptoms would start healing, I was like, well, this works for everything. Mine would just happen to be physical, but these emotions, like when we repress them and we don't acknowledge them, it's just a reservoir. It's like compound interest. It will build and build, and you will have a massive problem, a massive bill to pay later. So like exactly. And like when you're saying like the storm, it's perfect because why do storms exist in nature? To clear the atmosphere for a new slate. And that's exactly the same thing. It's like I'm here to like make psychosomatic sexy. I'm here to show people the psych and feeling these emotions. Yeah, I'm so serious. Are a natural way. Like the more we resist, the more things persist. So like acknowledging like if you can't anything that you can't express outwardly, like anger being like at your kids or like whoever it is, because it's not appropriate,
Yeah.
or sadness, you have to come back to it at some point, and the sooner rather than later, because it's so therapeutic what you're doing, what you explain there, and I encourage everybody, write about it. If you've had a traumatic experience, you couldn't express anger for whatever reason, just inappropriate, if you were sad and didn't have anyone to talk to, you write it down. You literally let yourself feel it. Cry if you need to cry. Beat a pillow, for goodness sake, if you need to. Scream into it. Just let it out. Like you see animals, they shake themselves off when they get up and stuff like that. I mean, these are all things that we just don't do.
Yeah.
So you can shake yourself off. That's also like another thing they teach in yoga and practice. Like just like do catharsis, like shake your body, like release it, acknowledge it, shine light on it so it can dissolve and metabolize. I like to use metabolite now because it's like helping it through.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Like animals just shake it off, and we don't, and we just hold on to it. And I think that that's why it's good for kids to cry. I mean, we don't want them to cry, but that's how they release that experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so necessary. The only way to is through. And if we pent it up, it's gonna come back later at some point. So please, if anyone has been through anything, especially like even just day-to-day stuff, acknowledge it. Don't let it build up. Like we all know compound interest, like that stuff builds, and it's the same thing with our life and our emotions. It's our well-being. Take it seriously,
Yeah.
and that's another society. They just don't find it acceptable. They're like, deal with it. Like I'm like, no, you deal with it and I'll heal it. Thank you very much.
You deal, I'll heal.
Yeah, I like to, yeah, exactly.
So, I wanted to just come up with something that people could do like now, like something. Yes. No, I said you can't bother me for just a little bit, okay? He's expressing himself. He's yelling, so that's okay. Um,
Good.
Now he's going to his room, so he's gonna be okay. But I think that we can touch on like what are some things that people can do now. Like if anything that what you're saying is resonating with anybody, what's one thing that they can do or a couple things that they can just start moving towards. One thing I wanted to mention was that you said that you read a lot of books. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of what we started doing too, my husband and I, is we would listen to a lot of audios, just kind of reprogram, listening to the same audio over and over again, something that resonates with you, listen to it over and over again so that you can literally reprogram your old belief system. So you're creating the thoughts and the mindset that you want rather than just leaving everything in there. Reading books and listening to audios a lot. So maybe that, and then like, what are some things that people can do now? If even if just a little bit of what you're saying and what we're talking about is resonating with somebody, maybe they don't know, or this is new to them, or maybe they do have an understanding that nutrition is important and the holistic perspective is important. But something that to help with that willingness, or just something that somebody can do now.
Yeah, so the first thing to do is be willing, like you were, and I was. Be willing to see things differently, and be willing to explore. And especially for somebody with physical symptoms, be willing to become your own private investigator. Like I always say to everybody, start reading. So two books I would highly recommend, especially, I mean, if you have physical symptoms, if someone has physical symptoms, are Mind Body Prescription by Dr. John Sarno. And then this book right here. Where is it? It's called Healing Myths, Healing Magic by
Oh.
Dr. Scene. And I just want to read you this small passage about to show what kind of his thing is. So, symptoms of illness and illness itself are the body-mind's attempt to more effectively express the energy that is blocked or unable to circulate. The movement, effective use, and dissipation of energy are primary in life. Once again, dis-ease is not a mistake of a stupid body. It is the body's attempt to reorganize its energy systems to allow for a greater exchange of information and energy, and thus a greater expression of consciousness.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Like, oh my gosh, I love it. So he kind of goes over myths that we have about healing and life and what we do. Like, he was the first one who really showed me, like, we're not our symptoms. We have to see it in a different way. And then Dr. John Sarno, Mind Body Prescription. I mean, anyone who wants to heal, like, I recommend psychotherapy. Like, it's my job. I'm like, seriously, don't be afraid to go work with somebody. The stuff that we have lodged inside, like, please seek help. Allow support. You don't have to do it on your own. Like, when I was willing and open, I went and started looking for people, and people came into my life. Like, just start looking, like, nutrition. Go see an acupuncturist or a nutritionist or just some natural healing alternative modality that you feel that you need. Like, I always say start with nutrition and the psych, because those are the foundations for anything sustainable.
Yeah.
But just start moves. Wherever your interests are, just get a book. I mean, like, just start.
Yeah,
Just
start.
any just start. Just start. That's what I would say. And then I just wanted to say a couple things before I forget. Also, okay, so if we start thinking about things in a different way, like, I don't believe in sickness. I believe in different levels of health. So if you are alive and breathing, you have some level of health,
Yeah.
because otherwise you'd be.
Yeah, you will.
So I just urge people to realize, no matter what your situation is, either emotional, mental, physical, like, you're still here and you're still kicking. You know what I mean? So, like, you can change the outcome. So
Yeah.
just start. Take that first step. Go see a nutritionist. Go see a psychotherapist. Start researching. Just Google your first question. Like, my first question was, what is this stuck
Yeah.
thing to my spine?
Yeah.
I don't even know what verbiage I use. Just start. Just start. Please just start.
Yeah. That's a really, really good thing to say. I think that's the best when you know, what Yogi Bhajan says is when the pressure's on, just start and the pressure will be off. But I think that that's the feeling that we have. It's just this constant pressure of just everything and everything's going on. And if you just start somewhere, but I think decide that you're starting on your journey to healing. Like, this is what we're
Yeah.
doing. I'm not just starting just to start. I'm starting on my journey to heal, and that this is where we're going. And it may not be quick, and it may not look like I think it should. I'm sure I know I have. That's my with
Yeah, it never does.
the no judgment thing. I mean, I'm constantly like, but no, it's supposed to look like this, and it's supposed to look like this, and I'm constantly judging my journey. But just, yeah, and I think a support system is helpful too, and I'm thankful for this community to have a support system through the journey. Um, and but yeah, so I feel like that's a lot. I feel like we want to talk for a long time. So maybe we can do another one where we are maybe
Yeah.
talking about like nutrition. Maybe we can segment it where we're talking about the specialties, because
I
I feel
would
like,
love to do that. I talk
yeah,
about nutrition forever and the psych. I mean, I love the psych, the
yeah.
psyche, the brain, and nutrition is my favorite.
I know, me too. I think that we should segment it so that we can do maybe like one on the psych and then one on nutrition, and we can just stay because there's so much information about all of those. Yeah.
I gotta put something together for fun, just to like step through and like I won't blab and like go off. I'm just like, oh, I was just talking. I had no idea what I was saying. I was like, I told you before we started, I was like, I'm really passionate, so I'm just gonna keep talking.
No, this is so important. This is so important. We have to bring, and I'm still recording, but we have so much information that we have to bring to the forefront of people's thoughts and minds, because um, if we don't step forward and speak what needs to be said, then that space is going to be filled with everybody else's stuff, and that's not unlike our minds. Is that if we don't stop and say, no, you're not allowed here. I don't resonate with you. That's not who I am. Then it's just going to keep being filled with gunk. So we have to step forward
Yeah.
with our message and, do what we can. So,
Yeah. And my number one thing, one last thing, just like so important, like
yeah.
please, like anyone dealing with anything, like again, you are not your symptoms. You are the person experiencing it. And like instead of I notice a lot in the chronic disease community, they like to claim it and like
Yeah.
I have fibromyalgia. You'll never hear me say that. I'm classified. Even if you feel depressed or feel anxious, like you don't have anxiety, you don't have depression, you just feel depressed, you feel anxious. And so it's a small distinction, but it's one that when you change that, then healing can really start, because you go from being the victim of, oh, this is because of this, to being the one in charge, being like, okay, well, it's just a name and I have the option to do anything I want for myself. So just from I have, cross out I have, and just classify, just or I feel. So just make sure that's where you start healing, is right there.
Okay, that's a really good point, and I'm actually going to probably summarize a little bit of this, but I am feeling this way instead of I have this, whatever. I'm feeling
Yes.
this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if people really resonate with your message and they want to reach out to you personally, or they want to follow your work, like are you working on anything right now, or how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my website should be up soon. It's groundedinwonder.com. And that will be up within a month, probably less. And on Instagram, it's Instagram/Lauren Tatarchuk. And I'm actually working on like a few programs right now. One, we'll have to talk. It's called the Psychosomatic Soul Map, and it's teaching people how to learn about who they are and stuff. And so trying to heal. So I'm piloting it this weekend actually at a workshop. And I'll have more about that. We could do like a segment on that. So that's something I'm working on. And I actually started an all-natural, healthy, organic cake business. So it's 4 ingredients. And if you're in Michigan, you can call me. It's coconut oil, eggs. It's all organic. Coconut oil, eggs, 100% dark chocolate cacao, and just a little bit of coconut sugar. And it's divine. And so that will be launching at some point. But yeah, I'm just getting started. So groundedinwonder.com and then Instagram. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so
I'll bring you a
much.
cake.
Yes. You'll have to send
Thank
it
you
to
so
me.
much for having me, seriously.
Yes, this was so wonderful. I just thank you so much. I'm so excited that we met. I'm so excited to continue the conversation. All
Yeah,
right.
thank you so much for having me, and I just love you, and thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.